The Contessa and the Bunny. Chapter 1 by Omalley, Dakota. She had forgotten the smell of the ocean, sometimes fresh, cleansing, other times a musky quality, a reminder that life existed, thriving in these waters. Other memories came with the screeching sound of seagulls soaring above the waves. The Contessa had been gone too long from her island. None of this existed in the vacuum of space. Water was often only silent ice, waiting to be harvested by rock hoppers dedicated to that task. In the depths of space, water was survival, a commodity to be traded and sometimes fought for. Mally stood beside Raina, holding one of her hands. They both looked out over the sea. For the red-headed madam of the crimson alcove, her memories were different. Neo-Extropia possessed oceans, and salt water covered most of the planet's surface. Both she and the Contessa had come originally from this world, a place the Guild referenced as Earth 27, but Mally had her time on the high platforms of Skyport Berry. She spent her days hundreds of meters above the sounds and scents of the sea. They both gazed out over the water, seeing the distant profile of one of Her Majesty's armored cruisers stirring up a rolling wake as it patrolled against a backdrop of a setting sun. The faint smell of coal smoke found them. Nearby, sitting in the high grass, was Lyria, their bunny-eared friend and lover. At first, all of this had been overwhelming for the Bonet woman. She was from a world of steel walls and finite resources. Such vast expanses of water and air were beyond her comprehension. Even her limited time on Neo-Extropia had not prepared her for this, a world of unimaginable abundance. The Contessa held Mally's hand tightly. She let her mind drift back to the time after the dangers of the Hyundai Crawford research station. Those memories seemed like a lifetime ago. The Republic offered to take her women out of corporate space. Hyundai Crawford security had disabled the reaction drive engines of the ship they arrived on. They'd been lucky. The Contessa had expected losses, but her team only had 4 injured. Still, it was a full third of those who had volunteered for what they believed might be a suicide mission. The Contessa stood on the bridge of the Republic ship and watched silently as a Bonet officer launched a salvo of missiles into the now empty station. Silent white flashes engulfed the asteroid, vaporizing steel and stone. Only a briefly glowing cloud of gaseous dust remained, then vanished, leaving the empty black of deep space. The Contessa's thoughts couldn't help going back to those moments she had been with Lyria. She had almost killed her. The dagger was in her hands, ready to stab into the heart of the bunny-eared woman. Her intent had only been to spare the beautiful soul from the sadism of a monster. It horrified her how close she had come to doing it. All she could think of then was apologizing, begging for understanding. For the Contessa, it was a rare moment when tears threatened to overcome her. All she needed was to look into Lyria's eyes and find forgiveness. That is not what happened. She caught up with Lyria before they boarded a medical transport ship. Temporary paralysis struck the Bonet woman's legs because she had so suddenly emerged from stasis. The Republic's doctors assured the Contessa condition was temporary. Regardless, Raina needed to offer an apology, seeking absolution from Lyria. She could still remember the trembling in her hands as she held the dagger, the horror of what she almost done. Lyria was on a medical gurney, surrounded by the wolf-like Lycos. They all eyed the Contessa warily as she approached, some tightening their grip on the axe-like blades they all carried. 2 of them moved protectively, blocking her way to the bunny-eared woman. The one who had prevented her from plunging her dagger into Lyria was there. He gave Rena an understanding nod and waved a hand, signaling the others to allow her to approach. Rena wasn't completely sure what she should say to Lyria. It wasn't always easy being the Contessa. There were times, though, it brought her strength. Rena sought that now. She stepped up to the gurney, looking into Lyria's eyes. Even in her debilitated state, the bunny-eared woman was extraordinarily beautiful, those orbs like pools of mystery. The Contessa took Lyria's hands into her own, bringing their faces close. She struggled to find her voice. She whispered, "Baby, I almost killed you." Her eyes captured Lyria's, not knowing what to expect. The aura of the Contessa vanished. Rena's humanity flooded in, the horror of what she had almost done crushing her. "Lyria, I almost killed you." She brought her face closer to the Bonet companion, not knowing what to expect. They were both transfixed by each other, silent, seeking answers. The faint scent of strawberries gently filled the air. Lyria's hands then grasped the Contessa's face, pulling her even closer. Their lips met. The kiss was unexpected, passionate. The rabbit-eared woman held their lips together for several long, lingering seconds. Rena felt her world transform, emotions welling up in her, stunned at the intensity, the sensation electric. Their lips parted. Rena's felt an energy pass through her like a storm. Lyria tightened her grip, pulling the Contessa even closer, the bunny-eared woman's passion burning into the Contessa like a blazing furnace. "Miss Contessa, Lyria understand. We talk soon again." Lyria continued looking into Rena's eyes. Yet another kiss, the energy of the second surpassing the first, the aroma of strawberries drowning Rena's senses. Lyria released the Contessa's face, eyes still locked. Something mystical passed between them. "Lyria, go now. Puppies take me home. I live long time now. I heal." Lyria and Contessa, not done. The Lycos, the wolf-like guardians of the Bonet, gathered around Lyria and started moving her towards the waiting Republic medical transport. The Contessa stood silently, her mind struggling to grasp what had just happened. Two Bonet medical technicians, wearing their distinctive white uniforms, approached Rena, squeezing her hands affectionately, then rushed to catch up with those departing. The Contessa stood alone for a moment, watching as they all disappeared down the station's corridors, her mind faltering, trying to grasp what had happened, the scent of strawberries haunting her. What had she gotten herself into? Rena pulled her mind back to her duties. She needed to regain her identity as the Contessa in order to complete her mission and return her women home. They had followed her so bravely, no one questioned the risks. It was important for the Contessa to lead them back to safety. Rena also needed to see Mally. She was longing for her red-haired acolyte, wanting to find again what they'd had. Rena was tired of war, her soul worn thin by the killing, haunted by the memories of friends forever lost. She had done what she had set out to do. The forces were now in motion to halt the ministry. It was time for her to return to her own home. She was waking up screaming most nights, sometimes from nightmares of friends dying, often remembering the faces of sisters lost during their unrelenting war. Other times haunted by the horrors of what she had seen, the lifeless bodies drifting in the endless vacuum. Her pain concealed within the soundproof sleeping compartment of whatever ship she was on. Most of all, she needed to be with Mally again. Hopefully, Mally would still want her. Theirs was a dark romance, the Contessa and the bright-eyed Fenian wench. Raina had never imagined caring so deeply about anybody. Right now, she needed to focus on the care and treatment of the women who had followed her so bravely into the abyss. The Republic would bring them back to their deep space colonies. They assured the Contessa they would provide the best possible medical care to the Guild women. It disturbed her how concerned she found herself for the bunny-eared woman. She couldn't shake the feelings that would swallow her when she thought about Lyria. Sometimes she had to literally physically shake herself, seeking to find the discipline not to be preoccupied with the Bonet woman. Lyria was being cared for in a separate medical facility from the one treating the Guild women. The Contessa had not seen her in days. She did not know her condition. The only thing she knew with certainty was that the Bonet were rushing their people through the process of disabling the deadly nanobots. There were lines of rabbit-eared people waiting to be rewarded with longer lives. She couldn't take it any longer. The Contessa had to know. There was a Bonet medical officer supervising the care of the Guild women. She casually attempted to ask about Lyria. The Bonet man's ears drooped slightly. His eyes seemed sad. He answered, his voice strained, anxious. The companion is making slow progress. She is strong. She will recover. Thank you for your concern. We all love her too. Love. The Contessa heard the word. Her mind wrestled with it. She barely knew Lyria. How could she possibly be in love with her? Yet she was having a difficult time keeping her mind off Lyria. This wasn't just infatuation. The Contessa knew damn well what those were. She had more than her fair share of her youthful trysts. Something about this was stronger, more seductive. She shook her mind off the thought, reminding herself that Mally was waiting for her on Neo-Extropia. Raina would return to her homeworld and ask her amber-haired love to join her. It was time for the Contessa to retire, to heal. First, though, she needed to finish her duties to the Guild. The Contessa had learned that Mia Orloff, the Republic's ambassador to the Guild, requested an urgent meeting. They had sent none other than the Ral Parthan to escort her to a medical facility aboard one of their massive habitat ships. He led her to an observation deck overlooking a hangar-like space, long lines of Bonet below, all patiently waiting to undergo the procedure that would grant them freedom from the deadly nanobots that had cursed them for so long. Ambassador Orloff soon joined them. She did not come alone. The synth ambassador was carefully pushing an ancient-looking wheelchair with Lyria seated in it. The Contessa felt a tremor run through her as soon as her eyes caught sight of the beautiful bunny-eared woman. Lyria was wearing what looked like some sort of hospital gown. As mundane as it was, she still looked stunning, the material barely concealing her feminine curves. When their eyes met, the seduction flared again. There was only happiness in Lyria, simple, accepting, but the Contessa could sense a passion there, like nothing she had ever known. She had to draw her eyes away, to focus her mind on the meeting with Ambassador Orloff. The ambassador carefully placed Lyria and the wheelchair to one side of the room, and then went to look out over the lines of Bonet below. She seemed completely oblivious to everybody near her. Then her voice rose, never removing her eyes from the spectacle in the hangar. The Guild has given us a splendid gift, the lives of so many of ours extended. The Republic is truly thankful for this. Our engineers are telling us that this gift comes with an additional burden. A longer life expectancy is going to put new demands on our already limited food supplies. We also project that to support the effort to contain the ministry, we will need many more ships and soldiers. This means creating more workers and warriors, additional mouths to feed. There will be a critical need for fresh food sources. Our estimations show Neo-Extropia incapable of supporting this. Many of our leadership are also concerned with the security of Neo-Extropia. We almost lost a companion. Thankfully, the courage of your women and the intervention of our Lycos saved our precious Lyria. Ambassador Orloff then turned to face the Contessa, her words now becoming more assertive, even a note of urgency slipping in. The Republic has a proposal, Contessa. We understand you wish to return to your homeworld. She was more than a little surprised to find out that the Republic knew of this. Ambassador Orloff hesitated a moment, then revealed an enigmatic smile not common in a synthetic. Contessa, or maybe I should say Reina, we have our own intelligence resources. Silent for a moment, wondering what else they knew, Orloff began again. We propose setting up a trade mission on your homeworld. The agricultural yield there is already significant. It is very possible that they could grow enough food there to feed both that world and ours. It's also our understanding that the Guild maintains a highly secured area on an island that you own. The Republic wishes to establish a consulate there. We would like to trade our mineral wealth for food. Our companion Lyria will be our ambassador. Contessa, we wish you to be her protector. The Contessa heard the words and froze for a moment. Ambassador Orloff was saying Lyria would come to her world, and the Republic wanted her to protect her. Had they forgotten she had almost killed the companion? Reina looked at Orloff, silently asking that question, and now understanding that maybe that didn't matter to them. They saw something in the Contessa that outweighed all that. She had avoided paying too much attention to Lyria until now. Her mind still struggled with the strange powers the companion possessed. Was she really somehow falling in love with this woman? Reina turned to look at Lyria. As soon as her eyes locked onto those of the Bonet woman, the seduction intensified. Lyria's face could be so very innocent, like a child's. In the blink of those eyes, something else emerged, something overwhelming. Reina knew this woman had an erotic power that could leave her senses reeling. They looked at each other silently. Reina couldn't help noticing how Lyria's nipples pressed into the fabric of the gown she was wearing. The companion was a genetically engineered work of staggering beauty. Even the bunny ears seemed to pull on her heart. Reina had to steady herself as her knees quivered for a moment. She forcefully reminded herself of Mally. This only brought on more confusion. They had told her how Lyria had dragged herself through broken glass to be beside Mally. Reina had to confront the possibility that she had been away too long, might already have lost the amber-haired woman who held her heart. She knew her duty. Her commission as a guild officer was still active. There were still responsibilities. The Contessa had learned that when confronting hard decisions, sometimes the only answer was to seek the right thing, the higher purpose. She was still in the service of the guild, doing what she had sworn to do, perform her duty, no matter how painful. Her personal matters were secondary. She raised her eyes to meet Lyria's again. Reina tried calling up every passionate memory she had of Mally, remembering every moment she had looked into the Irish woman's eyes. all the sweet memories they had built, the mornings of espresso and baklava. Lyria returned her gaze, those exotic Bunay eyes, beautiful and enigmatic. For the briefest of moments, Raina sensed a hint of sadness in them. The Republic's support for the Guild was turning the tide in what had been a hopeless fight. Assisting them in securing food might be a way of making the sacrifices so many of her sisters mean something. Raina glanced again at Lyria. The bunny-eared woman was beautiful even in the confines of a wheelchair. The discipline of the Contessa would have to serve her again. She knew what she must do. Ambassador Orloff, I will gladly escort and protect Lyria. First, with the permission of your republic, we need to make one stop along the way. I will promise my utmost diligence and security to the companion. She and I need a brief stop on Neo Extropia. Raina and Lyria were aboard Guild transport within a day. The Republic had sent them on one of their cruisers to rendezvous with a squadron of Kilo-class attack ships. Raina once again asserted her Contessa persona. The security being provided for Lyria impressed her. She decided it would only be appropriate for the Contessa to be guarding the companion on the journey. As she put on the crimson uniform again, she could feel the grinding weight of service. Raina only wanted to return to her home, hopefully with Mally beside her. She had to rediscover the woman she had once been. They boarded the guild ship with Lyria seated in her wheelchair. There was an honor guard of guild marines there. Raina wanted to believe those women were there for the companion, the Republic's ambassador. But she saw how the guild officers were as focused on her as Lyria. It would be the Contessa behind the companion's wheelchair. Raina found it mildly amusing that someone had subtly modified the ancient-looking chair for zero-G use. Somehow, the wooden wheels adhered to the surfaces beneath them. Lyria was no longer in the hospital gown. Now she wore a surprising ornate-looking, lightweight vacuum suit. Raina couldn't help noticing Lyria looked beautiful even in the utilitarian lines of the spacesuit. The suit also told Raina that nobody was taking any chances on the companion's safety. As they rolled through the boarding tunnel to the guild warship, the Contessa had her hands firmly on the wheelchair's handles. Just before they passed through the airlock, Lyria reached back to touch the top of one of Raina's hands. Even that light touch was electric. Lyria's voice followed softly and melodically. Thank you, Miss Contessa, for being Lyria's protector. Thank you. It was the Contessa who responded, authority in her voice. The honor is mine, Ambassador. Raina spoke the words but couldn't help feeling there was so much more she wanted, needed to say to Lyria. Things she knew would be best said in private. The Contessa maintained her composure as she took the companion to find her quarters. Hilo-class ships had better quarters than most vessels in the guild's fleet. The Contessa and Lyria each had their own small staterooms. Raina had requested her own sleeping accommodations, officially because it was befitting of her rank. What she was not saying was that her night terrors were becoming more frequent, waking her in feverish sweats, mindless panics, sometimes screaming at dangers only she could see. She wanted a soundproof room. Nobody else should endure her darkness. Lyria had matching quarters directly across the corridor from the Contessa's. This was something Raina also requested. She was the companion's protector. It was her duty to be nearby. The zero-gravity environment aboard the ship helped Lyria's mobility issues. There was a guild medical officer available to apply the stimulators being used to restore the neural pathways in the companion's legs. Being free of gravity was nothing unusual for Lyria. The Republic's habitats were commonly zero-G. The Contessa provided Lyria with safety instructions and showed her how to set up retinal scans for the biometric security system in her stateroom. She also gave the companion access to her own stateroom. Giving Lyria the ability to enter Reyna's quarters was uncomfortable. From a security perspective, it made perfect sense. In an emergency, it would be best for the bunny-eared woman to seek the protection of the Contessa as soon as possible. Reyna couldn't escape wondering if she wanted Lyria to join her for other reasons. It was difficult for her not to get lost in those eyes. Sometimes she had to exert the utmost restraint when she was near the Bonet woman. The journey to Neo-Extropia would require 3 days of Earth Standard Time. The Contessa needed to use some of this time to sleep. She was confident the guild crew would take care of Lyria. The companion was popular as soon as she was on board. Many of the women had pictures taken with the Republic's ambassador. Sometimes Lyria even put clothes on. The Contessa needed sleep. She knew that once they reached Neo-Extropia, she would need every minute of rest she could find. Her problem was that the war had stolen her sleep. Guild Medical provided her with medication to allow her to fall asleep. But the haunting memories of war's horrors would not allow her to rest. She couldn't sleep for more than 1 hour before the past would consume her mind again. These night terrors were the reason she requested the soundproof stateroom. Not to keep noise out of the room, it was to trap her screams inside. This sort of insomnia is slow torture. No matter how exhausted you might be, you dread the coming dark journey. It only takes one traumatic event to bring on this curse. The Contessa had hundreds. All the nightmares of a war that would never grant her any peace. The sleep medication worked relatively quickly, usually taking less than 10 minutes to take effect. Her doctor assured her that the drug was safe, but the Contessa every night felt like a game of Russian roulette, never knowing if she would be thrust into horror again or find rest. After checking on Lyria, she locked herself in her quarters to sleep. As she drifted off into a dream state, she found her trembling hands gripping the padded armrests of a guild cruiser's flight couch, her fingers digging into the material, trying to remain composed for the sake of the bridge crew surrounding her. On the main view screen at the front of the bridge was the image of the face of a young girl, maybe 5 or 6 years old, eyes frozen in terror. The Contessa had been in command of a guild kilo ship assigned to cover the emergency evacuation of a colonial world. Thousands of civilians fleeing an advancing ministry fleet. It was an event happening tragically on the fringes of frontier space. 30 unarmed transports attempting to escape the terrors of an inquisitorial fleet. The evacuation convoy had only a single armed escort, an old commerce protection boat with little in terms of armament, though captained by an older man with gray hair and stoic courage. History would have forgotten his name, but the Contessa would forever remember it. Captain Waldo was the appointed Commodore of the Altis 120 evacuation fleet. He was righteously determined to save as many of the colonists as he could. The Contessa would later learn his 5-year-old granddaughter, Greta, was among the colonists. The ministry had sent an inquisitorial fleet. This was not a force of conquest. Its mission was extermination. They were coming to purge another colony of heretics, people only guilty of not following their dark god. They would bombard the colony from space and then land their zealots to massacre any survivors. All the guild could spare to assist the evacuation was 3 ships. The war was going badly for the women. Their fleet, stretched thin, frequently lacked critical munitions. The Contessa's ship was racing to help cover the evacuation to save as many lives as possible. She established contact with Commodore Waldo. He advised the Contessa that the evacuation fleet had 30 ships and over 6,000 colonists. His tactical telemetry showed that the Ministry fleet had dispatched 6 raiders to attack the ships. There was simply no way these ships could escape the raiders. Commodore Waldo would order the unarmed transport ships to scatter. At least some of them might evade the Ministry zealots. The Commodore had no intention of escaping. He and his crew would engage the raiders, launch the few missiles they had, if possible, sacrifice their lives to buy the colonists more time. He wanted to give his granddaughter a chance to live. The Contessa ordered her crew to prepare for high-G maneuvers as she intended to push her reaction engines to their limits. Before she could even finish the order, she saw battle lights flashing green as her women prepared for combat. She signaled the other 2 guild ships. They couldn't possibly escort all the scattering ships, but they could engage the most threatening of the Ministry raiders, possibly even distract the enemy ships away from the colonists. They were pushing the ship's reaction drive as hard as they could, calculating deceleration vectors to bring them into a series of optimal ordnance release locations. The Contessa knew they might fight this battle alone. The other guild ships were in no position to assist them. She and her crew were ready to do this. The colonists had to be saved. The communications officer called the Contessa's attention to the main view screen. There was a video message coming in from Commodore Waldo. The screen flashed up a view of a tiny bridge space, barely large enough to contain the 3 men seated there. The Commodore sat between the other 2 men. The Contessa's tactical officer looked up from her monitors, her voice sounding with grim professionalism. There was a tear rolling down her face. "Ma'am, telemetry shows the Commodore's ship to be within firing range of 2 of the enemy vessels. I believe he is preparing to engage." Raina looked at the main screen again. The gray-haired Commodore Waldo stood up, straightened his uniform, then turned towards the camera. He brought himself to attention and brought his right hand to his forehead in a formal salute. Raina's tactical officer spoke again, her voice agitated. "The Commodore's ship just launched ordnance. 4 anti-ship missiles, all on target for enemy vessels. Enemy vessels are launching at least 12 missiles bound for the Commodore." Raina watched the man on the screen. He was a grandfather to a little girl named Greta. Raina's heart felt as if it caught in her throat. She summoned the Contessa's strength. "Communications. Can Commodore Waldo see us?" The comm officer spoke up. "Yes, ma'am. Video stream, 10 by 10. The Contessa snapped to attention, returning his salute. She looked into the eyes of a very brave man. Then the screen flashed white and went dark. The tactical officer spoke again. "Telemetry shows ordnance detonation. The Commodore's ship is gone." The Contessa held her salute a moment longer. The view screen was now empty. The bridge was silent. She dropped the salute with the formality of an officer on parade or at a funeral. For the briefest of seconds, She wondered if they might be next. She pushed the thought out of her mind. It was time to assert command. Tactical status on enemy vessels. The officer responded. Contessa, the enemy destroyed all the missiles with their point defense systems. They took no damage. They are turning to pursue the evacuation ships. Ma'am, I'm not sure they're even aware of us. Every member of the bridge watch waited to see what the Contessa would do next. Though badly outnumbered, if the ministry was unaware of the guild ships, there might be hope yet. Reyna pulled the Contessa's identity around her like an armor. These women were relying on her to make the right decision. The Contessa would find the proper course of action. Tactical. Find the closest threatened evacuation ship that is being pursued. Calculate an intercept where we can intervene. Attempt to use the element of surprise to destroy that raider and rescue those colonists. The Kilo ships all came with a sophisticated battle computing system. It only took seconds for it to identify the best case scenario. One of the larger colonial cargo ships, big, slow, lacking maneuverability, extremely vulnerable. One raider was in pursuit directly astern of it. The computer estimated the ministry ship would intercept it in 45 minutes. It would take the Contessa ship 70 minutes to reach the intercept. This would not work. Reyna had the analysis run again. The results never improved. They had to try, no matter what the odds. Hundreds of innocent lives depended on them. The Contessa's voice rose with venom. Engineering, initiate safety override on the reactors. Bring us to 125% of optimal. Signal the crew to the flight couches. Tactical. Run continuous targeting calculations on the raider. Notify me as soon as our probabilities exceed 50%. We are not giving up on those people. Within minutes, the Kilo ship was racing through space like a comet of destruction. Every offensive missile was on standby. The launch tubes were ready. The ship's reactions were redlining as plumes of atomic fire hurled the guild ship through the void. The Contessa felt her mind willing the distance to close faster, to bring them into position to strike at the enemy. So many lives were at risk. She was waiting anxiously for her tactical officer to report a targeting solution, the math that would allow her to release hell on the ministry. The minutes seemed like hours as the distance closed. The engineering officers watched the reactors nervously, wary of containment failures and radioactivity spiking through the ship. It was then that the Contessa saw a shocked look pass over the face of her ship's psyker. The woman's face filled with horror, and her lips moved as though trying to say something, but having no air to carry her words. Moments later, the tactical officer's voice filled the bridge. Both the evacuation ship and the raider are off our telemetry systems. They've vanished. The Contessa couldn't believe what she was hearing. Now her voice sounded disbelief. They couldn't just disappear, resweep the area, start braking maneuvers. The ship's psyker was now sobbing. It was impossible not to hear her pain, and yet she couldn't speak, her eyes filling with silent sorrow. Reyna could not believe what she was being told. Where had the ships gone? She reasoned they might be within visual range now. What the ship's sensors might not detect, human eyes might see. All the ship's external cameras became operational. It was the navigation officer who discovered the grim truth. Ma'am, visual confirmation of a debris field to starboard. Why hadn't this shown up on the ship's sensors? The tactical officer then added to the confusion. Ma'am, I'm detecting a thermal signature consistent with that of the evacuation ship. It is moving away from us. There is the magnetic shadow of a smaller ship alongside it. That might be the raider. The smaller ship has deployed some kind of countermeasure system to prevent our targeting. It was then that the pieces of the monstrous puzzle finally fit together. The Contessa ordered the magnification on the starboard camera increased. She closed her eyes for a moment, not wanting to accept what she knew to be true. She gave the next order, trying not to scream. Starboard camera, main screen. Bodies, lifeless, hundreds of bodies floating in the vacuum. Nobody said a word. The ministry had spaced the colonists, all of them. The face of one small girl drifted into the screen, empty eyes showing signs of rapid decompression, forever frozen in silent terror. Maybe she was Commodore Waldo's granddaughter, Greta. Raina woke up screaming, her hands flailing in the surrounding darkness, confusion and fear overwhelming her. She could feel her heart racing as though it would burst out of her. Her breath raspy, grasping now, the child's face locked in memory, the horror flooding through her again, as though it had happened only moments ago. A soft light came on, warmth washing over her. Strong, gentle hands grasped Raina's arms, holding her firmly and yet tenderly. Words pushed back against the panic, shoving away the fear. Miss Contessa, be calm. Lyria here. Terrible, terrible, terrible nightmare. Lyria here. You safe now. Reality reformed around Raina. The shadows of the past retreated, revealing themselves as only horrific memories. The little girl's face faded, a terrible moment from months past, not minutes. In the new light, she saw the kind face of the companion, those mysterious Bonet eyes offering peace and understanding. Lyria pulled a blanket around Raina, protective arms holding her, further guarding her from the painful past. Miss Contessa, sleep, need sleep. The aroma of strawberries eased Raina into sleep. It seemed different. It felt like a healing warmth was flowing into her body. Raina's eyes opened again hours later, the most healing sleep she'd had in months. Lyria was still holding her, an oddly soothing purring sound coming from her. The rest was invigorating, new life finding her, but she didn't want to leave the companion's arms. Bunny Woman had dozed off, the velvety ears relaxed, an aura of peace surrounded them. Raina could feel a bond growing with Lyria. There was no intimacy beyond affectionate cuddling. It didn't take long for her to understand the simple, innocent magic the companion possessed. Despite the Bonet woman's well-known reputation for sexual prowess and excess, she was also innately a healer, an empath of sorts. Her time with the bunny-eared woman was a rescue from the painful darkness that was consuming her. Once they were in high orbit above Neo-Extropia, the Contessa decided they would take a small landing shuttle from the Guild cruiser to one of the more isolated docks at Skyport Ferry. The idea was to avoid drawing too much attention to themselves. 4 of the Crimson Alcove security team, dressed as dock workers, would provide them with an escort from there. Raina was in her uniform, but concealed it under one of the black rain slickers popular with merchants. Lyria was, once again, in her wheelchair since they did not know yet whether her legs were ready for planetary gravity. Rena would, Rena would later think how ridiculous all this was, with those excitedly dancing bunny ears prominently on display. And, of course, the ever present aroma of strawberries. It was early morning on the docks. The sun had barely cleared the horizon. Most merchants had yet to open their stalls. They passed two of Vivian Ravenwood's watchmen. Both seemed quite bored until one of them spotted Lyria. He began a highly animated chatter into a handheld communication device. Mostly, the walk to the Crimson Alcove was eventless as any stroll on the docks, other than the four wary women surrounding the Contessa and Lyria. For Rena, the quietness of the walk only heightened some of the anxiety she was feeling. She was about to see Mally again for the first time in months. Would Mally even want to see her? Rena was also pushing a wheelchair with a woman who they both might be in love with. Even she had to admit her own feelings were in a jumble around Lyria. All she had to do was look into those eyes, and her heart would jump. This was also the last day she would wear the crimson of the guild. She had done her duty. It was time to go home. The moment had come for her to pick up the pieces of her life. Rena did not know if Mally would come with her. She wanted to reclaim what they once had. The Contessa needed to heal, regain her strength. She just didn't know if she could do it without Mally. As they got closer to the crimson alcove, Lyria reached back and touched Rena's hand. Talk to Mally. Believe in love. As soon as Lyria and Rena entered the crimson alcove, it was like the beginning of a surreal dream. She had been preparing for this for months. Still, it felt as if she was deliberately walking off the edge of a cliff. The second she pushed Lyria's wheelchair through the bordello's entrance, the impact of what she was about to do hit her. They knew she was coming. The entire guild security team was waiting for her in full dress uniform. These women had become her sisters, her family, but it was time to go. With each step she now took, she knew her life was entering a new unknown. She wanted to make that journey with the right women at her side. Luckily for Rena, she had rehearsed her speech for today at least 1,000 times. She knew every word perfectly. This was important because as soon as she and Lyria entered the reception area, she began searching for the one person who mattered to her right then. She found her almost immediately. Mally was standing beside Petty Officer Bryant, the officer the Contessa had selected to supervise the security here. Rena felt her heart jump. She had not seen her red-haired love in months. Mally was wearing one dress she had custom made for her. It was a simple spaghetti-strapped item, something she once told her would be easy to slip off as put on. She looked beautiful in it. The dress brought back so many memories. Mally held a bouquet of deep red roses. Rena could feel hope growing within her. Some of it was recalling the energy she associated with being the Contessa. From that second on, she would never let herself lose sight of her red-haired vixen. This was when Rena discovered Lyria eating one rose. She had a lot yet to learn about the bunny-eared woman. All Rena needed to do was ask Mally that one simple question. Answer would determine their future. How she might respond terrified her. Even the Contessa's courage wavered at this. Their eyes lingered on each other, Rena then asking Mally to take her to a place where all three of them could speak privately. She couldn't help noticing how fearful Mally suddenly became. Mally hurriedly brought them both back to her bedchamber. Raina couldn't help noticing the nervous energy, the fear running through Mally. Lyria had also become silent, as though trying to conceal herself in the wheelchair. Raina knew the time had come. My beautiful Mally, I need to go back home. This war has taken a toll on me. Too much death and suffering. I need to find myself again. I will take Lyria with me. The Republic wants her to serve as an ambassador to help them secure more food supplies. She will be on the island with me. Raina took a deep breath, closing her eyes for a moment. Mally, I know you've built something here, and I am so very proud of you. I do not know how to tell you this. Raina couldn't sense what was going through Mally's mind. Fear was growing in her. Was she about to lose her? But the question needed to be asked. Would you leave this behind and come be with Lyria and me? Help me find again what we once had. I know I'm asking much. The world froze. Raina's future, the Contessa's future, was hanging in the balance on the answer they might receive. Mally looked into Raina's eyes. The magnificent black-haired woman was biting her lip. Mally, love, I need you. Help me become the woman I once was. I cannot do it without you. Mally rushed over and threw her arms around Raina. God, yes, I'd follow you into hell, miss. Lyria jumped out of the wheelchair, pouncing on the other two women. Raina let out a laugh of mock indignation. Mally held Raina even tighter, as though never allowing the woman to leave her again. Lyria, don't tell me you've been had me peddling you around for no good reason. The bunny ear woman gleefully exclaimed. Just so fun to have Miss Contessa pushing me around in wheelie chair. Lyria grabbed each of their hands, her voice sounding with excitement. Mally loved Contessa. Contessa loved Mally. Both loved Lyria. Lyria loved both. The bunny-eared woman pulling her own clothes off. Get naked. Onto bed. Tired of waiting. Let's do this.